Hello everybody and welcome to the Under the Heat Lamp podcast. Today I'm joined by my friends and colleagues, David.
Hello, Kaylin.
George.
Hey.
And Don.
I would like to start this episode with a statement.
Okay.
May I have the floor?
You have the floor, sir.
Okay, thank you.
2 seconds.
What the hell?
But you didn't have it ready.
To all of our loyal customers, we here at Under the Heat Lamp strive for inclusivity, freedom of speech, and grabbing life by the horns. On last week's show, one of our members, in a tirade of both outrage and jealousy, stepped out of lines with these rules by a series of comments. These comments included, "He looks like a twat," "Hey, redacted, if you're listening, fuck you," and "It's like the Oscars for twats in Yorkshire," when referring to an award they'd previously won. This member has now had an official verbal warning and some of their mindfulness hours rebuked. We shall do what we can in the future to prevent occurrences like this from happening again. I would like to take this opportunity to bring us all together in these strange and unprecedented times and raise a toast to money and productivity. Thank you, and good luck in your future endeavors. Signed, the Under the Heat Lamp podcast team.
Bravo, Don. To money, everybody.
To money.
To money.
Money and productivity.
To productivity. Thank you for that. And I will say that I'm really sorry for those comments last week. I don't stand by them. Okay. So, after that, important message. We are going to be talking about Wiccans, or, modern day witches.
I like how you just left Wiccans up in the air like it was common knowledge.
Well, yeah, so Wiccan, it's kind of like a pagan religion type thing, right? Does anyone want to introduce it? I did it last week, so maybe...
Yeah, I guess Wiccan is the religion that is, based around this kind of paganistic, like, witchcraft, and then witchcraft itself is the practice of, like, incantations and spells and that sort of stuff. Mm-hmm. So we'll be talking about modern day Wiccans and the community around it.
Okay, so does anyone have any sort of initial thoughts? Don, you're a Wiccan fan. What do you
I've become more of a Wiccan fan through doing this, actually.
Me too.
I find it really, really interesting to read about. I'd probably put more time into looking at this more than any other topic that we've done.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know why, but I mean, I know in my eyes it's kind of lighthearted, but if you dive deep, it gets into like kind of, I mean, for me, like strange territory where it's like unlike anything I've sort of seen or heard of.
Okay, well let's get more into that.
Yeah.
David, what was your what were your initial thoughts on the Wiccans?
Well, I'm not too sure exactly what it is still. I'm very... maybe I should clear that up. Not sure whether it's more of like a belief system, whether it's more like a religion, whether it's more of I don't want to say industry, but you know what I mean, where you see like a lifestyle choice, like an idea around, like crystal healing and that sort of thing. So I'm still like unsure about the whole thing myself. I didn't really find it not that I didn't find it interesting, but I'm pretty confused by the whole thing to a certain extent. It felt very, I don't know, it's just a little off.
Did you feel the information and stuff was like quite scattered? Like a lot of people had different opinions on what it was to be a Wiccan.
Yeah, I just couldn't pin it down at all in terms of what it is. Whereas some of the less sort of mainstream beliefs tend to have more of an ideology or like a dogma that can be followed. This was very, it ranged from something like the crystal skull healing and things like that to full blown hexes and the occult. And yeah, I don't know. It felt very, very hard to pin down for me.
That's kind of like what I meant when I said even when you dive deeper into it, you kind of find this whole other side of it. Because on the surface level, and I guess what we would see a lot, is that you see people kind of taking more appealing aspects of what I guess Wiccas would be into. So quite sort of free spirited and nature loving and whatnot.
Yeah, and
but
I guess
then
it crossed a lot with like paganism, right? That's another
Yeah.
thing. It's like it's like a lot of. I always thought of it like a little like Venn diagrams, you know, where like different things would cross over with other little things that all kind of encompassed it, but yet weren't. Everything else had its own like specifications and terminologies and things like that. Umbrella term is how I'd say. Sorry.
Yeah, and at the same time, it's like if you go deeper, then it gets into witchcraft, which I saw a lot of things of, Wicca and witchcraft and things like that are like a separate thing. They're not one and the same. And I found something called like astral traveling, which is tied to meditation and, doing things with crystals, some forms of magic. And yeah, it's a very wide subject.
Are we gonna? Can we just talk about the elephant in the room straight away? Because we here at Under the Heat Lamp, we want to try and be as sort of inclusive as possible, and we talk a lot about not wanting to become like the bully cast or just like ripping on people. But do you guys think there's actual? Do you sort of believe in any of it, for want of a better term? Would you consider any of yourselves like spiritual, or what did you find that was actually something like tangible that you could get hold of?
So I think like all of us probably don't believe in. I think it's fair to say none of us are religious people at all, or like particularly spiritual or anything like that. But I know that all of us respect people's right to practice their religions and would never want to make fun of that or anything like that. And that's not what we're doing. Definitely not about Wiccans even, because these kind of religions are sometimes the easy targets. No one's going to say anything about like the major religions, but you can often just make fun of these weird niche ones. But yeah, so that's not what we're about. I definitely don't believe in it. Do you guys have anything else?
No,
Dawn?
I mean, I would say the worst way we could have come into this was, say like, we could be like, well, I tried to cast a spell last Saturday, and I asked Kaelin,
it didn't work.
Yeah, I wanted Kaelin to come and kiss me, and he didn't do it. So thus, it's bullshit, I think we're all like, not going to be that obnoxious about it.
George?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, yeah, but that's the thing though, right? Like, it is such an easy target, especially when you compare it to like the major religions that people really don't like make fun of.
You don't want to make fun of, So yeah, that I think is really true. And if you're a Wiccan listening to this,
we've got your back.
Any comments, and you think and if you think we've misrepresented it, just let us know. Email us at heatlamppodcast@gmail.com.
That's wrong, at heatlamppodcast@gmail.com.
Wait, don't we have the website
Podcast
now?
at Twitter.
Isn't it heatlamp?
Yeah, we got undertheheatlamp.com as well. There'll be all the links to the social medias and everything there.
Oh, I better add that.
Yeah. So yeah, just contact us there if you've got any comments. But yeah, no, we love you, Wiccans. And obviously, like, if you listen to the last podcast on LinkedIn, we were majorly taking the piss, and even about stolen valor and stuff like that. But in these kind of topics, we're not making fun of easy targets.
Yeah, there's fair game and there's not fair game.
Yeah, and LinkedIn, twats, fair game. Wiccans, no.
So would you say it is a religion? If you had to like pin it down to like a set of beliefs, or how would you like? I find it hard to classify it. Like I said previously.
Yeah, I guess it's not a traditional religion. Like, it has no structure as far as I can tell. There's no like central authority. There's nothing like that. There's no, as far as I know, there's not even any like churches to go to.
Like a set of beliefs or like a creed. Or
it's
like
well, as you were saying, it's like all these different things, and people would practice in completely different ways. But it all seems to be the sort of like spiritualist, pagan, nature-y, hippie-ish like world, and this is another element of it. But the thing that really struck me about it was the whole ritual element. I think I find with like religious movements and things like that, it's often what people are actually getting out of it isn't, in my opinion, some actual real spiritual power or anything like that. It's like taking time to do stuff for yourself. And I think the act of like making a shrine in your bedroom and sitting there and like thinking and like praying or like doing some kind of ritual is probably really therapeutic. And I think that's from what I was getting, is that what a lot of Wiccans do is have like practice like that.
Yeah, like me and George, and I think Kaelin as well. I'm not sure if David sort of dabbled in anything, but we've done some form of like meditation in the past, and I don't think any of us necessarily looked at it as we were having this experience or journey per se, but it was kind of just taking time to ourselves to, how would you guys describe it? I don't look at it as like a spiritual thing. Will you guys?
Yeah,
agree?
some people do. Some people.
Oh yeah, of
like,
course.
that's
I
a
just
really
mean
big link to
in
them.
our experience, like I don't think any of us did necessarily.
Yeah, I think that's just who we are as people. Like I'm not quite sure about you guys, but for me, I am 100% like not spiritual. Anyway, like extreme like realist.
Me neither.
Yeah, I think we're
So-
probably the four least spiritual people you could probably find.
Yeah.
That's why we're trying to tread so carefully around this sort of thing, because
Yeah,
we are
don't
not.
make fun of
Yeah,
anyone.
we're not particularly. Yeah, receptive.
Yeah, because
to
we're not
this.
really in those circles. Like, there's a lot of links between, from my perspective, something like Wiccans and Witchcraft with tarot cards and horoscopes and all these different, like, quite mainstream, like, I don't know what you'd call them, like, just,
beliefs,
yeah, I guess so.
Yeah, like practices and
Yeah, and they all have their own, like, cool little aesthetics around them, and they have their own, like, kind of style. Like, I find that they kind of share a lot of that as well, like the aesthetic of tarot cards. It's, like, very similar to Wiccans and
I
stuff
will
as
say
well.
I do love tarot cards and the idea of the tarot. Out of all of the spiritual, in massive air quotes, stuff, there is something cool with that, especially in regards to like writing and storytelling and the idea of
It's kind of cool.
game.
yeah.
It's what modern playing cards are based on, and it's like a lot of play around that. It's quite. There's a lot of stuff in there. That's...
looking into this. Sorry.
No, yeah, go on. No, just saying. Sorry, I pause a lot. It's like it's very interesting how a lot of things, again, that are all encompassed by this sort of not quite belief, but you know what I mean. Like you said, George, the aesthetic, the style, the lifestyle. It's all quite cool in that way. But then again, I don't know. I just found a few things where when it comes to like bay leaves, increasing your psychic awareness, and like sleeping with them under the pillow can cause prophetic dreams. That's where I draw the big line in permanent marker.
Yeah.
What do you guys think about like the community as a whole? Because I've been researching on YouTube, Reddit, even Facebook as well. It seems really large, probably one of the largest that we've looked at, especially compared to like targeted individuals and like
The first
the
thing we
people
looked
on
at.
the
Someone
people
valid,
on
that
LinkedIn
was it.
stuff, and we've done quite a lot of like test podcasts as well. And some of the topics we looked at there were just way more niche. So what have your guys' experiences with just the community?
This is the most like mainstream community, I guess we've covered, because it's not just the idea of like this sort of stuff is in popular culture. There was a lot of films in the 90s like Hocus Pocus, and there was, is it called the Cult or the Hex or something? Another sort of that
Are you
style.
thinking of TV show?
No, because there was loads of TV shows like
Yeah, there was like
Buffy,
Charmed.
Oh, like Sabrina?
There was Sabrina, like Charmed, like that. All that stuff was very, very popular at one point, and it seems to have remained popular sort of throughout the ages. Whereas like the sort of new age hippie stuff of like the 60s, 70s, like into the sort of like the 90s when it became really like cool and kind of in. And even now, it's very much got this home on the internet that. I don't know. It seems to be something that captures people's imaginations, or there's something to it that is appealing. But yeah, I just wanted to say that it's actually, I think it's one of those things that's a lot more mainstream than people actually think when they think of like, people casting hexes and spells, like modern day witches. But it's been in popular culture for a long time, and it's had some staying power.
Yeah, I think kind of like what David was saying, where there's a lot of it that we can kind of see, even in people that we know. I mean, we don't exactly have many ties to like Wiccan people or anything, but we do see. Well, I mean, it's reasonable to see probably small pieces of it kind of creep into people's lives on like social media and and just kind of casual conversation and stuff like that. Would you guys agree? Obviously not in like terms of like spells and things like that, but the idea of like the belief system in like a very basic way.
Yeah, a lot of the stuff that I saw was like energies in the world.
Yeah.
Like there's vibrations or there's energies, and what this witchcraft practice is, it's like channeling these energies, or like sending out like your own positive vibrations to to help you. And I think that, like, I don't know about you guys, but for me, I know a lot of people that prescribe to that belief system that like linked to karma as well. The idea that like karma isn't this like metaphorical idea, like it's a literal, like there are positive energy waves in the universe, and if you act positively, then you'll like put more of those energy waves out. So I think, like, to a certain extent, there are a lot of people that would believe in a similar thought structure to Wiccans, but they just don't call themselves it, or they don't like the aesthetic or something.
Yeah.
It's the kind of thing where I think when you would go to like a festival or something, you'll probably see a lot of people with some of the same ideals, but like George says, they don't actually identify as Wiccan or witch or anything like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, 'cause I think the terminology is like pretty off-putting to a lot of people. Like, I'd imagine it's really hard just to say to a friend like, "Oh yeah, I'm a Wiccan," or "I'm a witch."
Yeah.
Like most people aren't gonna respond to that like well.
Yeah, because they think you are sitting in front of a cauldron trying to conjure something, as
Cackling
opposed
away.
to just, I don't know,
Actually,
overall being kind of lighthearted.
That's something I actually wanted to talk about, is the idea of the industry around it. It just reminded me, because there's this, especially in America, there's a lot of anti-Christian like sentiment towards the idea of like witchcraft and that sort of thing. I don't know if you remember when like Harry Potter came out, it was widely sort of criticized by those circles. But also, like, I was reading an article where people who have businesses that sort of dabble in, I say dabble, but like provide the services and like equipment and stuff that witches and Wiccans need to cast their spells. They've been targeted, and it's quite interesting that you have these little industries that are having difficulties existing because they're tied to the dark arts, as it were. You guys think? What do you guys think about that in terms of it's like, we talked about the aesthetic, but the idea that it is like an anti-Christian, or it doesn't just. It's very ready to like beliefs really clash into other beliefs like that.
Yeah, I mean, sorry, go ahead, George.
I think a lot of the contemporary stuff that I was reading up on, looking up on, like, contradicted that. They would say that it isn't anti-Christian, and it's like its own thing, and like they don't even believe, like Wiccan religion doesn't even believe in any Christian devil or anything like that. But yeah, as you said, like in mainstream culture, it definitely has that link. So it's just, I find it interesting to see where in history the like gradual changes happen, and when it becomes like more contemporary and more like all inclusive, or what parts of it were like based on ancient history.
Yeah, that's interesting to me, because I've not looked into it too much. But I guess we talked about it before recording, but a lot of stuff we found to do with witches and Wiccans also crossed into other sort of occult or paranormal sort of communities. And I guess like the scare of like Satanism and like D&D back in like the 80s kind of has another ring to it, where it's kind of bad things seems bad. Let's be outraged.
Well,
there's also the Wiccan Read, which is like a poem that is also like a set of standards, I guess. It reads, if it harms none, do what you will. Yeah. So it's just the idea that, like, don't like curse people,
don't be a
or
dick,
do anything that would harm anyone. Yeah. So I think the actual Wiccan ideology and religion itself is like, very like positive in that light.
So
or at
guys,
least like.
Okay, sorry. Go.
Yeah, go on.
No, I was going to say, did you guys look up any spells? Did anything cross your mind? Were you tempted? Were you actually? No. Because I looked up some spells. I'm not going to lie, just to see what they were, and to be honest, a lot of them just seemed like chants.
Well, yeah, I
poetry,
don't think
you know?
any of it is necessarily like saying the magic word, though, is it? It's like, I think there's a lot more preparation to casting a spell to it than whipping your wand
like-
out and shaking it or something.
Yeah, it's
It's
like
just not that at
ceremony.
Yeah,
It's like ceremony and mantra rather than fucking hexing someone.
Yeah,
You know?
Yeah.
definitely.
You mean like instead of like live spell casting?
Yeah, like you don't flick something at a bottle of water and it becomes, a bottle
Oh,
of beer
yeah,
instead
yeah.
or whatever. It's more, from what I understand, it's more you channeling your energy into, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, if anyone did look into this, into the energy that the world is also channeling to kind of influence some things to happen.
Yep.
Yeah.
I think that kind of rounds it out.
Yeah, and energy you can also mean like like intention, right? And just like wanting things to happen, and just like kind of like meditating on things, and that kind of makes things happen, right?
Yeah, definitely. If you spend like, 2 hours each day doing this ritual, like really thinking about like, I don't know, wanting the boy to like you or something, you spend all this effort into doing it, then you're probably going to end up spending a lot more effort in other aspects of your life as well, just because you're thinking about it so much. And yeah, I guess it depends on like how far you take things literally of what they're doing.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, with the literality, I think we are sort of dancing around the fact that, I mean, a lot of these people do believe that there is, they are actually conjuring something into the universe when they do this. And I think the reason it works, like we said, is because they're thinking about it a lot, etc. And also probably doesn't always work either. But yeah, so I think that, what exactly do they believe then? They are literally channeling energy, or?
Yeah, I do think that. I do think that is the majority of the opinion, is that they are. I saw one person, a really popular YouTube channel, I think they had like 600,000 subscribers, and they described it as like she would use a magic wand and she would say that she's just channeling or pushing the vibrations into like a single spot. So yeah, it's a lot of like energy waves in the universe, and yeah, I mean when you get to that point, you're kind of like stumbling across like pseudoscience, because it is, when you talk about like energy or like strings and stuff in the universe, it does have that like underlying scientific air to it.
Yeah. Like when you fucking have that shit, like when you see like the Instagram posts about how science proves that if you take your shoes off and walk on the grass, you get the like fucking organs or whatever like going through, because the connectivity of your skin to the natural world, blah blah blah. Like, I think like what at that point, I think it's sort of fair game. I was gonna say with you guys, like, what point does it become like call outable? What point does it go like, actually, this is bullshit? Where's the line for that?
I mean
the whole thing, right?
Well, yeah, but you know what I mean. When it's like, okay, you can have those beliefs and like it works for you, but when is it like, if someone's fucking like trying to summon a demon to like fucking murder someone, like,
well,
you can be like, what the fuck, man? Like, but I'm sure that's
yeah,
extreme.
but that is not like what the millions of people like actually
are there
thinking
millions
about.
of Wiccans?
Okay, I probably stepped
Oh,
out.
100%, of course, millions.
Yeah.
What?
Okay.
Of course.
The way I see it is like
Name all of them.
name every Wiccan you've met.
But that's the thing. What is a Wiccan, right? Is it fucking something that someone self-identifies as?
Yeah,
Is it, like,
that's probably a
you know what I mean? Like, what is the like? Okay, the demon thing was like sensationalism, but like, at what point do you go, come on? Like, for me, it's like, sorry, crystal healing. Like, you'd be like, come on,
David,
come on,
you
man.
do believe in crystal skulls.
Yeah,
exactly.
David is a crystal skull head.
But isn't it also like, if you want like a fucking, but then I can see also why having like a salt rock could be beneficial. It's certainly not going to be like harmful. It's not going to cure your fucking cancer.
It is,
but like,
it is interesting, because on the like one of the largest witchcraft Reddits, they had a big sticky post about coronavirus, and it was saying like, we all like incantations and spells and and charms and stuff. But then it said that there was like a rule in the subreddit. It was only light incantations, so basically only like, you know, kind of social or like small things, and then it advised, like, you know, if you do have the coronavirus, like, please
not
seek
to
medical
fucking
help.
huff some
No,
sage.
like no
Go to the
amount
actual
of
hospital.
like no amount of spells or whatever will fix. Like, please seek.
Yeah. I think it's like one of those things where, I mean, you see it a lot in like Christian communities that we see, like, and stories coming out of mostly America, where say someone is ill and then it's like, well, all we can do now is pray for them. It's like, well, not really. We could do much more than that.
I thought you were going to talk about faith healers then.
I think that's what he is
yeah,
doing,
that kind of thing
right?
as well. It's like,
Yeah.
you have something that we're going to try and fix with, you know,
Magic.
a practice that isn't, I mean, real, you know. I guess.
Yep.
Yeah.
I guess that's the thing, because like, if that is a level that or a line, sorry, that they're drawing, where they say if there is serious medical issues, like, please, you know, seek doctors, then to me it more suggests that it's like a more of the fantasy of it, and they enjoy the idea of it more, and they're not actually believing that they are like creating physical change in the universe.
Yeah.
And
100%. It's like a fantasy kind of thing that you want to buy into, or not quite like a fantasy, but that it's like buying into a lifestyle, isn't it? You subscribe to the lifestyle that you want to have, in terms of whether it's like an aspirational looking neoliberal American dream thing that we saw last week, or if it's something like this where you want to, you know, look a little deeper into the world and not want it reduced to scientific ones and zeros.
Yeah.
Which I can see totally. Like, I really can. I wanted to talk to you, Caleb, about the idea of a lot of stuff that I came across was the link between like witchcraft and feminism. And I just wondered if
Oh,
you'd
dude, I was
come
just
across
about to
that.
bring this
Yeah.
up. Yeah. So it seems to be kind of blowing up in the online feminist world, and yeah, I was just speaking to my girlfriend's flatmate about this. Because I said we were going to do this podcast on Wicca, and she was kind of saying like, oh yeah, like there's this big kind of like modern growing thing about feminism and witchcraft, because obviously witches were, you know, burned at the stake in America because they were like heretics and all this sort of shit, and you know, pagans, and I think a little bit of that is kind of carried forward with the movement. It's mostly, well, I mean, there's men that do it, but I think at least witches tend to be associated with women.
Yeah.
And there's kind of like it's kind of like about like women getting together and just like, I don't know, just doing things behind closed doors. And they, you know, traditionally because they've had so little ability to like, you know, leave the house and be independent, you know, historically, that kind of like women have found these ways to like kind of influence the world from indoors. And right now I think like, I don't know, like tarot and astrology and all that sort of stuff is kind of blown up in the online. On Instagram, everyone's posting about their horoscopes and shit, way more than I think they used to. I'm not sure why or what exactly's happened, but this stuff has definitely become cool again, like crystals and horoscopes.
Yeah.
It's
with young people as well. Like,
yeah, like very very young people. And I wonder why. Maybe they're craving some kind of spirituality in this like fucking desolate world we live in.
Yeah, I was gonna say, when you live in like a concrete jungle, I mean, why not turn to this, where it's like, I don't know, a bit more. I don't know. It's nice to romanticize about it, I guess.
Yeah, and like a lot of the stuff I've seen is like people doing spells and stuff related to their like shitty dating lives and like fucking over their ex-boyfriend and stuff like that. Which I think is like probably like another, again, just like a bit of a meditation to get past things.
Yeah,
I think it's also a lot easier to consume different like cultures on the internet. If you think of, you know, when TV was the main source of entertainment, it was very like heavily controlled, whereas anyone can make an Instagram and not, you know, violate the terms of service. Anyone can make a subreddit. So there's probably a lot of people who will come across many of those old things, whether it be Salem witch trials, like the old R around the time, or modern TV shows. And if they like what they see, there's no reason for them to like not dive deeper on the internet and find that stuff. I mean, I think it's probably I don't know. I don't want to draw the comparison with some of the more like conspiracy stuff, but the fact that there is less of a filter on the internet means that all these sort of weird and wonderful things are given a lot more space to grow. And it's cool that something like this is actually, like I said, it's always kind of been mainstream. So it's weird that it's not weird, but it's kind of, it's interesting to see this new life it has in the internet. It seems to have, been around since ye olden times, right? It's something that's like been around for forever, and obviously, we don't think that witches are real, and like burning them at the stake was clearly just some fucking bullshit and a travesty. But it's interesting that those beliefs were still then had at that time, and it's very timeless in a weird way.
It's a bit countercultural as well. Like, in America, the whole even in the modern day, talking about how witches are evil and the whole Harry Potter controversy that you were just talking about, I think some people sort of lean into that a little bit and embrace that kind of countercultural aspect. They love the pentagram. They love being a little bit like shocking. I think
the fashion
aesthetically.
Leans into that. Yeah, 100%.
They kind of want to be like, fuck you, organized religion and everything. We're doing this thing that's very taboo to you.
But yeah, like punk has always had that sort of, like punk rock has had that fucking pentagrams type stuff. Anarchy, fuck the system, like we actually.
And like David said, like David said, the aesthetic really comes into it as well. Like a lot of the people that you'd see on YouTube have like, loads of tattoos and like dyed hair and like, super alternative and stuff. So it's really cool that it's kind of like another aspect of that.
Yeah. It's a cool little movement, I think.
What do we think about the consumerization of it, Kaelin? Hot topic.
Well, okay, so how much consumerization is there of it?
There is, I actually looked into this as well, and I saw a video about your altar, and people were doing like altar tours, I guess, as well. And they would be showing like
my altar hall.
Like their Book of Shadows and their crystals.
It's like an open house.
And when doing the, there was a point where they were talking about the monetary aspect, and they were showing like the different levels of money that you could spend to like get the different things, and they would say like, early on, there was. So there'd be like like this is like quite expensive, like this Book of Shadows costs like over £100 and stuff, but you can get like a cheaper one. It's like still kind of okay. And there was quite a link towards money spent and like power of the thing as well. Like the crystals and the chalices, so they would say like, this crystal is like super rare and super expensive. So
those rabbit claws don't come cheap.
Yeah, that's pretty fucked.
On the flip side, I did see a video which is almost the opposite of that, fortunately, where they were saying that I won't call them trinkets or whatever, but the things that you use to make the altar and do the magic and things like that can be worth anything. And they were saying how they just went to cheap charity shops and things like that, and they just found something which was kind of appealing that they gravitated towards, and that's what they would use to do these things.
But then also like sorry, I got a bit of a cough today. It's like very much the idea of like fashion has always sort of leaned into that idea, like goth, emo, anything like that. It's kind of, there's a lot of money to be made from witchcraft. Would you think, in terms of more from a purely consumerist, like capitalist point of view, rather than it being like people within the culture itself, but people selling to said culture. You're cool if you have an Evanescence t-shirt.
Oh yeah, of course, because you could just like so much of the prices and stuff are just way more than people would ordinarily pay for those sorts of things. It's just they're so into it that they'd be willing to pay so much more.
I think it ties into I mean, it's good that David kind of brought up the word of like gothic, because I can imagine the culture in the sense of representing yourself is very similar. And so you would go out and buy a lot of things to present yourself in that manner. And usually that stuff is like a little bit expensive. Like remember old like my brother had a pair of these when he was younger, like huge like kind of goth boots, and they would have like flames on the side of them and stuff like that. Do you
I
know?
remember those bad
Bring
boys.
it
Yeah,
back.
like-
Bring those aesthetics back.
Yeah, like my brother
They
bought a
kinda
pair
come
of those
back.
like 20 years ago, and they were like, you know, £150 or whatever. So it's like an investment. I won't be surprised if there's a lot of it that's kind of like that.
Yeah. I think a lot of the YouTube world, and in various subcultures, is about kind of not bragging, but people want to like watch something they aspire to, so they want to see someone with like a fucking crazy game collection, or like fucking hell,
A
like
huge
Like
altar.
a perfect morning routine. Or...
yeah, that sort of stuff. So they kind of want to see this person with like this idyllic looking altar, even though you know probably their life isn't that perfect.
Man,
Ordinarily, they want to represent that.
there are so many Wiccan starter kits on Etsy,
Really, yeah.
ranging from anywhere from around £25 to 175.
Yeah. So I think with any of these things, you know, like mediums and people who speak to the dead or whatever, it's kind of like yeah, fine. But then when they start ripping people off and like taking advantage of people, and I will say Wiccans seem the least of all to do that. You know, I don't think they're doing readings for people who've lost their family,
Yeah.
and kind of giving anyone any hope or anything like that, which I think is nice, because it's always been the problem I've had with psychics.
100%.
and that
Oh,
sort of
man.
thing.
Yeah,
Whenever
definitely.
we talk about anything, like I'm sure we're going to cover a lot more occulty, paranormal stuff on the pod, but yeah, this was the one that was kind of a nice starting point, because there is something like almost wholesome about it, or so
Yeah,
you know,
definitely.
the forefather of it all, almost like, you know, this is one there's some cool stuff in there, like there really is, and like the belief system is not one to be, you know, like made fun of. But as soon as we get into like mediums, man, the Derek Akora shit, like, oof, we are going in. Like,
Yeah, when you
that's,
break down the Wiccan stuff, a lot of it just comes to, I don't know, I guess falling back into nature.
yeah, right. I think
But
like
yeah, I mean,
paganism
Derek
and
Akora
Wiccan, like,
tricking some fucking, I don't know, sad mum that her dad is, you know,
Yeah.
still wandering about a broken old down house somewhere.
yeah,
It's
right.
like, you know, pretty cynical and horrible.
Rest in peace.
Pretty dark.
Yeah,
looks
but
like
I
this.
don't think any Wiccans doing that.
No, I think there's a pretty. You made a good point about nature there, because I always sort of associate Wiccan and pagan as a very closely linked thing, if not, you know, exactly the same. And there's, you know, I don't think many people would have anything wrong with paganism, or like the idea of, you know, respecting the earth and that stuff, you know,
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
or
like,
druids and, you know, etc.
yeah, that sort of natural aspect is like a really big part of this culture. Like it's a really big thing. Even the altar stuff we were talking about, I saw somebody had they like found a stone that like kind of resembled a bowl, and another stone that was like kind of rectangle, and they're like, oh my god, I found the perfect natural mortar and pestle for my altar. So yeah, it's like the whole nature aspect of it is really big.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do kind of dislike hippies, but I mean.
Oh yeah, don't get me wrong. Like the kind of people you would see at festivals, and they're wearing big, exotic, baggy-looking trousers, and you know they
God.
think they're really enlightened when they actually just need to
Rainbow
put down
hair.
a spliff for a minute. You
Yeah.
know, like sure,
Yeah.
like that stuff sucks.
I think
but
it's one of those things where like Wiccanism, is that what's it, how would you say it? Like, you know,
Wicca?
being
I
a
don't think
Wicca
yeah, I'm not sure.
Being a
Wiccering
Wiccan
out
or Wicca
is
the
being a Wicca is fine. Like the belief system is cool. I think it tends to draw a lot of like undesirable people towards it. Is that the best way to say it? Like a lot, what you said, like a lot of those hippies that are, you know, taking their gap year to go to the fucking music festival and like smoke weed at Stonehenge, or the slightly odd people. But in itself, there's nothing inherently wrong with it.
Oh, I mean, it's so innocent. Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, I think that's why we can be a bit more chilled out about this one when, probably surprising some people when they look at, I know, some more specific stuff where it's like magic, this is shit or whatever.
Yeah.
But I think if you look at it on like a very basic level, it's all pretty harmless and
A very umbrella sort of introductory to the more spiritual or supernatural side of,
Yeah.
of things.
and if anything,
Yeah.
kind of cool. I sort of like it.
Yeah, it's a cool little thing. It was really, really fun, like, researching into it.
Yeah.
I had no idea about the actual Wiccan religion. I thought it was just like a witchcraft thing.
Yeah.
I think,
Yeah,
like,
it's cool.
yeah. How would you guys? Oh, sorry, Caleb, you're going to speak.
I was just gonna say I love the Satanist, pagan aesthetic of like black and like pentagrams and all that sort of shit. I like it in like fantasy stuff, but I think it's kind of rad that people do it as well. So,
Yeah, I was going to say that's
What were
like
you
the
gonna
least
say?
likely aesthetic you could possibly rock.
I mean, I would never
Like
rock it
normcore
myself,
to the
but
life.
I love fucking goths, but I don't want to be a goth, you know.
Yeah. No,
Yeah.
I was
Like,
gonna...
I love all the I love that shit. But yeah, sorry.
No, but like you said it perfectly. Like I was just going to sum up my feelings on it by saying something very similar in that, you know, it's not for me like at all, but it's totally cool. Like I have no real problems with it. I don't think it's really like hurting anyone or offending anyone. It's like you said, the coronavirus thing. Like there are very clear like, don't try and cure this with a spell. Just go to the doctors, do some cool shit.
Yeah.
Just it's just very cool. It's like going. You think you can see that when you go into the shops where you get hit with the wall of incense and there's some like maybe some odd looking things around, but it's pretty chill.
Basically
So people
fine.
the people
Yeah,
are nice.
basically fine.
You can look at some cool sculptures. Like it's not gonna change my life, and I'm not gonna live it that
not for
way.
me,
but it's fucking cool. Like,
Does anyone have any final thoughts on our boys, the Wiccans?
yeah, it's cool. I don't fuck with it, but it's cool.
Yeah, it's cool looking into it.
Yeah, it
was fun.
It was nice times.
Yeah.
Any Wiccans out there, let us know.
Yeah, as usual. Yeah, follow us on all
Comment,
the
email us.
Let us know. We had a target individual commenting. If you're still listening to the podcast,
We're watching you.
Ti, yeah, we're watching you, dude. We're outside your house.
No, the thing that was funny about that comment was that there was also another comment that was hidden from someone called Chief Handler, saying
so we had
these people
everyone.
are mad or whatever. So it's like we have both sides of the spectrum.
Yeah, we got the fucking TIs and we got the handlers commenting.
Bring
And
it
obviously
If
a
you're a
shout
handler
out to
or you're a TI, say hi.
and shout out to Mark from
Yeah.
Oregon as well. Hope you're well
Yeah,
out
Mark
there.
Morgan.
Oh, yeah.
Hopefully you're still
Hope you're
listening.
still there.
Assuming he hasn't emailed us.
No, I checked the emails yesterday and we still got nothing. So be the first.
Yeah, be the first.
We need it, please.
Dude, you shouldn't tell them
You don't
that
even
because-
have to have a question. It could just be a comment.
Yeah,
You know.
just say hey.
Heatlamppodcast@gmail.com or follow us on
Yeah.
Twitter at Heatlamppodcast.
And also, we got a website now, or we will do soon. And you can get us on all the apps and write us a review, etc.
And also, there was going to be a casual podcast at the end of last week, but someone didn't edit it, so
So that will be
And
out
turned up
tomorrow.
10 minutes late to this recording.
That will be out tomorrow. Yeah, sorry, I had to take had to get here. So anyway,
Make a cup of tea,
yeah, make up tea, and then Discord is being weird. So anyway, that's it from us this week. Bye guys. Have a nice week.
Bye. Farewell.